In this lesson, I'm going to be discussing two topics. And the first is just a continuation of the first lesson that we did. The video was running kind of long, so I stopped that a bit early for Q&A. But that topic that I still need to finish up is for how you know which data items need to be put into the CSV file and how that CSV file needs structured. This is a pretty common question people have is they don't understand how their data file needs structured. Before we look at the actual data file itself or this data file starter here, on the website, I just want to show you that under the tutorials, if you go to Easy Composites and to the data file, written documentation, everything about the data file for how it needs structured, what all the headers do, everything is listed here. So refer back to this if you have any questions because everything is in there. I think a lot of people don't know this page actually exists. Now, if you just want to quickly see a list of available headers that you have to use, if you click, you got to be on the home menu. So if you're on the build composites area, if you click the home menu, if you go to the data file starter, this will allow you to create pretty much an empty data file, but that will be structured in the structure you need. Now, Pixnub is not going to rearrange or organize your data. It's not a data collection system. Pixnub is meant to just batch process the images, but it is up to you to get the data in the proper format that Easy Composites needs. So I'm not going to be going over that because there's too many systems for how people collect data. I mean, there's literally dozens and dozens of systems that people can use. So that's really on your end to do. Now, when you first come in here, everything is going to be unchecked. This will show you all of the available columns that you can choose or the headers that you can choose from. The only thing that it's not going to show is this first column for Easy Comp and then the first name and last name. You're not going to see selections for those. And that is because those are always created when you run this. Those are just default columns that always get made. However, there is a checkbox, get names from file names. If you click this and your file names are set up with last name, then underscore first name, it's going to automatically import that information from the file name and it's going to populate the cells with the first and last name. It has to be last name, then an underscore, then the first name. You can have an underscore after the first name and stuff after that, and it will ignore that. But it has to be, the file has to start out last underscore first. Now, everything else beyond those three columns will import empty, but it will show you the structure that your data needs to be in. So how do you know which data headers you need? I mean, it really depends on your template setup and what you are doing with your template. So in the case of this template, and I know that if I'm going to batch process class composites, I'll need the group ID. That's how it groups the class composites. If I'm going to create yearbooks, I'll need a yearbook group ID. That's the YB group ID. That's how it groups the images for the order it puts them into the yearbook. For if you're grouping by grade or whatever it is you're grouping by, you need this column. If you're going to force the order of the images, like for example, you're putting the teacher in the first slot, you'll need the force order column. This top section is all your image level items. And so the text, that's referring to a separate text layer that's underneath the student name. This template doesn't have that, so I'm not going to check that. This next section is group level text headers. Now these are for the text that is not assigned to specific image slots. All that text that is group specific. So the school name is the same for the entire group. So these are the text items that are in the graphics file under the image overlay. So I can't maximize it here because this window is open, but those are those text items that are contained there. And you remember from that last lesson, this one, I think we had a teacher and a year, school name, group text 1. There also was the grade in there, although the text item itself didn't use that, but that was in there. And then for the yearbook, we'll have a YB group text that's specific to the yearbook. You can create your data file to work with yearbooks and class composites. Any columns that aren't used for the batch that you're running just get ignored anyway. And then the last thing that this template did, remember we had that logo file, so you'll click that. There are other items here, but most of the time you're not going to use any of these. Just a brief explanation. The hide show layer checkboxes, these are meant for if you want to have specific layers in your template that it shows and hides. For instance, in your background folder, you can have it to where you can click, if you click show layer 1, for instance, you have a layer called red, you could put that in your template in the cell and it would show that layer to change the background color. I'm going to have a series of videos on these two sections. I'm really not going to cover it in this lesson though. I'll just briefly mention. And the action items, those you can run custom Photoshop actions. So after it builds the template, you can further customize the template dynamically through Photoshop actions, similar to what the SPA plugin can do. But again, I won't really go into it here. So I'm going to create the data file, and then it's going to pop up a folder selection window, and you will just go into the folder that contains your images that you're creating the CSV data for. Before I do this, I'm going to hit cancel one more time. Go back into that data file. So I forgot to mention the delimiter. You can use a comma, tab, semicolon, or colon. You can use CSV, TXT, or TSV file extensions. As far as Easy Composites is concerned, it treats all of these files the same, and it automatically determines your delimiter. So any of these will work the same. However, if your data has commas in it, for example, if you have commas in your file name, sometimes I see people put like a comma between the first and last name and the file name. If you have that, you cannot use a comma delimiter. Easy Composites cannot handle it. Even though Excel can, Easy Composites can't. I'm not going to get into details there, but if you do have commas in your data, just use a semicolon is the one I recommend, and then it will work with commas in your data. Okay, I'm going to hit create data, and then I will go to the folder that has the images, and that combined folder, and you hit open, but it doesn't actually open it. It just creates the data file. So if I go into open that file now, you can see it's created this file, and all of the cells are blank as mentioned. However, it did import those names because I used that checkbox, but it's created that CSV file for us. And then you can see the data structure. I will point out too that these columns don't have to be in any specific order other than the first column. For Easy Comp, that has to be the first column. Anything else can be rearranged. So if you are getting data from your school and the columns that you need or in a different order, you can leave them there, but you can use this as a guide for how the columns need to be named. That's the important thing. Just make sure the columns get the correct name. And then, oh, last thing about data files too, and go back into my spreadsheet program here. When you're saving a data file, and this is very important, make sure that you're using the character set Unicode UTF-8. If you're not using this and it defaults to like Western Europe or something, which sometimes happens, it won't be able to import special characters like your characters with the Spanish accent marks. Those will not import because it has to be UTF-8 for the JavaScript to be able to import those into the Photoshop plugins platform. So I think that about covers what I wanted to discuss with the data sheets. Now let's get into the creating the yearbook. So the yearbook is more or less identical to class composites with just a couple of key differences. I'm going to just open the template here. And in the download, you've got this template as well. Creating documents. So there is a yearbook template folder. Okay, so this folder comes with, or this template comes with 6 folders. These are actually 6 separate templates. I'm just going to open one of them here. So let's do the 6x5 with group headers is what that folder is called. You see that there's only 3 files in the yearbook. And this is different than how class composites work. The graphics file works exactly the same as class composites. Let me view this as a list so you can see the names here. Now for your layout files, they're similar to the class composites layouts, except you only need one of them. You have the option for 2, and they have to be named differently. So for class, let me get back to the Finder here. I didn't actually mean to open that. Let me just get back there. Probably have that window open somewhere, but okay, so with the class composites, the files have to be just named easycomp hyphen, and then the extension for the number of images. The names for the yearbooks end the same way with that easycomp hyphen, like 027 in this case. But when you're running yearbook mode, it's going to look for some additional text on the end of your file names. So those names are YB hyphen main hyphen easycomp hyphen then the number of images. This one is needed, the one that's the YB main. That file is the main page for your yearbook, and this one contains 30 images. And if that's the only file you have, it'll use that for every page of the yearbook. There's another file called YB first, and if that one is there, it'll use that for the first page for each group and then use the main page for each additional page of the group. So let me open both of these here. So if you have a YB first, this will be the first page for like each grade. For example, if you're grouping by grade, then each additional page for that grade will go on to this page, which has no header, and it will keep filling pages until that group is complete. The other thing I'll mention here, and we'll run a quick demo here in a second, but the other thing I'll mention is for your this header text, although the graphics files work the same, the exception is if you're gonna run a group header for your group, and this you want to use the YB group text header, but you're gonna put that text layer needs to be in the layout file, not the graphics file. So that's one thing that is different than class composites, and it'll be in the YB first layout file. And the reason why that is if you put this in the graphics file here, if you put it in here, what's going to happen is it's going to try to put that text in for every page, and you don't want it for every page. So because of that, it only goes in this first page here, the one that says YB first. Anyway, I think this will make a little more sense when we batch process. And the last thing I'll point out before we do that, though, is why can I not open that? Okay, so in our spreadsheet, remember I talked earlier about the group ID is how it groups the images for your class composites. You've got the YB group ID for grouping the images for your yearbook. The reason there's two of them is because you may group the images differently. So class composites, you're grouping by teacher here or by class. Your yearbook, in this run we're going to do, I group them by faculty and students. So all the faculties go in their own group, and then all the students in the whole school go on to their group. And you could set these up by grade as well, but since there's only 3 classes and there's not many students here, there's only actually 3 faculty, I just did it faculty and students. But we'll run this demo here. So on build composites, instead of selecting batch mode, you select yearbook mode. It'll give you this message that the recenter bottom row has been turned off. That's this button. You can check it back on if you want, but usually you want to leave that off for yearbooks because you usually don't center that bottom row in yearbooks. And then for your grouping, when you go to yearbook mode, the default goes to that YB group ID, which is this column. You can actually, if you want, it allows you to select group ID for the grouping, and then or none. If you select group ID, it'll go by obviously this column. If you select none, it's not going to do any grouping. It's just going to order by last name and then by first, and put them all into one continuous mugbook. All right, let's let me hit run here. Oh, before we do that, I forgot. We got to change the template. So let's grab that yearbook template. I'll use the 6x5 grid with group header. And then background in that download, there is yearbook sample backgrounds. I'll just select the purple. I'll go ahead and leave the yellow styles with the beveled corners. That'll be fine. I think that should be it. So let me hit build. Then it's going to ask you for a name. It will create an additional subfolder with whatever name you put in here. And then this will be the name of each individual page as well. And it will put a page number at the end of each one. This should only take about a minute, same as it did for the class composites here with the same number of students. Right, so let me open those yearbook pages so we can look at them. You can see it's made us yearbook test page 1, 2, and 3. Now page 1, there's only 3 on there because remember, I grouped that one group by faculty and there was only 3 images. I mean, typically you'd have more than 3 teachers, but what it does is when it gets to the end of a group, it's going to start a new page. So in this case, we went to students and it put the header text based on this YB group text. So it put this text that says students for the students and faculty for the faculty. And then when it moves to page 3, it gets to the end of this page and there's still more students. And it starts a new page until it gets to the end. And if there was more pages, it would just keep on going until it got to a new group. The only last thing to point out is these groups, it puts your pages, or it orders the groups alphanumerically for how it lays the pages out, which is important. For example, if you're going to group by grade, you just have to keep this in mind. Let's say, oh, that's not what I want, not YB group text, YB group ID. So let's say we were wanting to order the yearbook by grade. Now, it doesn't matter what order your spreadsheet comes in. Easy Composites reorders anyway, because it's going to, of course, sort by last name and then by first. And then when it groups, it's going to reorder everything as well. But it's going to set everything alphanumerically in the order it puts the groups. So with the first through the 5th grade or 6th grade or whatever, those automatically get put in order because of the number in front. Unless you're using text, unless you're spelling out first and second. But in the case of this, it would put 1st grade or 2nd grade first and then 5th grade, then it would put kindergarten because that comes after the number alphanumerically. So what you'd have to do, if you wanted kindergarten to go in the front, put in 0 hyphen kindergarten, and that would force those to the front of the order. And then if you're doing faculty, you could maybe do 01 hyphen kinder, or 01 hyphen faculty, 02 hyphen kindergarten, or F comes before K. So you could just put 0 faculty. In any case, you just got to be mindful that it's going to sort these alphanumerically. That way your pages sort correctly. In worst case, it would just put the wrong number on your page, and when you made a PDF, you'd have to resort those yourself if you didn't have this part correct. Anyway, I know this video drug on pretty long. I think that about covers it for what we wanted to discuss. So let's go to Q&A now. And if you have any questions about any of these topics we discussed, I'll be happy to answer, and then go in live into Photoshop if needed and discuss anything that we need to answer in Photoshop.